Okay guys, this is going to be for the Painting 3 class. Today we are going to be working, and again, this is for students who missed my live class this last week. We are going to be starting with first just regular color pencil, just for the fact being that I'm allowing the students to try to get at least watercolor before we actually start with the painting. So we're going to just use regular color pencil. We're going to be going over color blending. I will explain how to do it properly. For those of you guys that have Prisma Colors, if you'd like to use those materials to practice, it will be good for you, just for the fact being that you can use, and these are Prisma Colors, you can see there the name on them, versus Crayola, because you can use the two colors, and I'll give you an example, from red to yellow to create the orange as it's mixing. So it's kind of a good practice, because it's like if it were paint already. So if you do have access to them, great. If not, it is okay. We can still use the 3 Crayola crayons to get the same effect while still practicing on transitions, which you will be using, and I'll explain that right now in a little bit, with paint. Even though paint is a different medium, we still have to work with the amount of pressure that we are applying, whether it is a pencil or a brush. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I can show you an example with these like I did in class. I will be honest with you that as we are working on the live, I go into more depth and more detail. I go very quickly with these, so they're not very long for YouTube to upload, as well as just so you can kind of get the idea and be able to do the project along with us and catch up. Okay, now as far as materials are concerned, I do recommend that you try to buy some kind of brushes, as well as at least watercolor, because that is what we are going to start with. If you want to start already buying acrylics, great. You'll be able to get on the ball. Right now you see here that these are just Prang, and this is watercolor here. The reason why I like this particular brand is because it does come already, and these are not very clean. I've had these using these same ones, and you can see that I still have several amount of it, and on this I have had probably been using for the past 5-6 years. Same packet with my students, so one should be more than enough. If you are one that have a heavy hand and you like to use a lot of paint, then you can buy a couple more, but one should be enough for the class. Now if you notice that right here the actual cap is dirty, that's because I use it as a palette, and I will be showing you how to clean on the first day, so I'm not cleaning that just yet, so I can show you the proper way. Which that way you don't waste anything, because honestly, like if we were using this color, it's a waste to clean this, because you can actually re-wet and use, which I will explain later. Okay, so as far as this is concerned, again, I like this brand because you can use this as a palette already, plus these do have, and you can notice that they do come off, because you can buy these as replaceable and not have to buy the full pack. I think the whole pack, because it includes all of this as far as using it as a palette, will cost anywhere from $3 to $4, and when you buy these separate, you can buy them almost at like $1 a pack, because they do sell the replaceable, so that is an option for you. Okay, please excuse the hands, guys. I know I have no nails because of quarantine and everything. I do not have access to be able to go to get them fixed, so you'll have to deal with that. I am so sorry, but you'll have to deal with my nubs. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on that. I'm gonna go ahead and we're not going to be going over paint, so I will be moving these out of the way. I do recommend, as far as sizes for brushes, you do notice the examples that I have here. I would go with actually something that's also a little bit larger than something of these. As far as you can see that it is a fine brush bristle. It's not the thick plastic one, so I do not recommend those. I would get fine-haired brushes, as well as getting one larger compared to the ones that you see here, and at least one that has a point, so a fine point one. Okay, those are the only things that I do recommend. So as far as coming along with the actual project now, we're just going to be dealing with the Crayola here. I'm going to move the Prisma Colors on the side just so I can go over a couple of things. Now if you don't know the color wheel, I would tell you to reference back to when you possibly took an art class in elementary and they explained to you about the rainbow. So it's the same order, and I will just talk about something. So it's red, and the primary colors, which are our first colors, are red, yellow, and blue. And the reason why I explain this, and I stress this especially in painting class, if you run out of paint, if you have these 3 colors, then you can go ahead and mix more to get the secondary colors, which is what we're going to be playing with in the class with acrylics. So when you buy your acrylic paints, if you want to buy the larger bottles in the red, yellow, and blue, it's a good idea. And then maybe the secondary colors, you can get the smaller bottles, just because if you do run out, we can still mix to get those tones, okay? Secondary colors are the ones that fall in between. So when we mix red and yellow, we get orange. When we mix yellow and blue, we get green. And when we mix blue and red, we get purple. So you notice that it is a wheel, okay? And it just basically starts over again. Now, with the red itself, if you were to ever see a rainbow out in real life, next time you see one, study it, and you'll notice at the very end of the rainbow, after purple, after violet, you will see that it has a slight hint of magenta in between, which is what you would find in between these. Honestly, and it's like this here, yes, it would be considered like if I were to mix the tertiary, so the third color that goes in between here, I would actually get red violet. However, if you add white to red, you do get a hint of pink, which means that that little magenta color that you were to see in real life is just it starting all over again, okay? So at this point, you need to know these orders, because especially if you're working with Crayola brand, it is cheaper. It does not have a lot of wax in the actual color pencil. So what you need to do is make sure that you follow the order of the color wheel. If I'm going and transitioning from color red, I have to go into orange, and vice versa with all the colors, okay? So the reason why I mention that is because we are going to start with those 3 colors first. These are warm colors, so think of things that are like fire, the sun, things that are hot, okay? That's how you can remember that they're the warm colors. It's the first half. The other half of the color wheel would be cool colors, so you would think of things like grass and ice and grapes coming out cold from the refrigerator and so forth, okay? So that's just kind of a way for you guys to think of it. Then go ahead and do so it'll help you. Now at this point, again, like I said, we're going to be working with the color wheel, and we're going to work with the warm colors first. So I'm going to go ahead and go with red. If you've never done transition before, I do recommend that you practice with a pencil. However, these are actually going to be easier in a sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply pressure with the red, and as I move across to get lighter, if you notice, I'm moving like in a circular motion, more oval shape, but it is considered called, or at least the correct terminology, circular motion. And as I move across, I'm going to get lighter and lighter and lighter, and push less and push less. If you accidentally do stop, I do not recommend that you start right away from where you left off, because you might not remember how much pressure you're actually applying to the colored pencil. So come over here to the dark, and then as you move your way down, pick it up and get lighter and lighter, all the way till you want to try your best to get to the white, where it's a smooth transition, okay? Now, the most important is when you're dealing with yellow, and I'll explain why right now, for it to actually have that smooth transition. When you're doing red and any other colors that's not dealing with yellow at the moment, then as long as it's close enough to a transition, you're good, okay? So now what I'm going to do is what's called a backwards transition. And I am going to put, like I did over here, little arrows. So this is where I started getting lighter, and I went all the way up to about right here. So just as a reference point of where we are stopping, okay? Now with the orange, what I'm going to do is right here where I stopped, I'm going to apply a little bit of that color first, and right here where I stopped with the red, I'm going to start lifting the pressure slowly and getting lighter and lighter and lighter on top of the red. So I'm still incorporating transition, and I'm going backwards on top all the way, and I am getting lighter with my pressure all the way to where I stopped with the red, so it has to go on top. And that's how we get a color blended where it looks smooth. Now, this is not enough layers. That's just one layer that I did, and again, and I'm going to put it right here. So I started here with the arrow in the opposite direction up to that area. However, that is just try number 1. I do have to do a second layer of both colors to make it very, very nice and crisp, and it will look more density in color. So I'm just going to go on top with the same exact motion that I already placed the first time, and then I'm going to go back on it again with the orange. So that's number 2, and you'll notice that the color will intensify, okay? And then I'm going to do it again with another layer. So that is layer number 3. And I at least recommend to do 3 layers. That's where you're, and again with both colors. So 3 layers, 3 with red, 3 with orange. And that will intensify your color so much, and it will give you the look as if it were like Prisma color. So the more layers you put, especially with Crayola, because of the little wax that it contains, the better. Now, going to yellow. So if I was going to continue this strip with yellow, then what you want to do is make sure that you take your time with the transition with the orange. Transitioning into yellow, so that means orange or green, you have to make sure that the transition is as perfect as possible before you apply the yellow on top. Yellow, the thing is, especially with Crayola crayons or colored pencils, they are a sealer, so that means because they seal, you don't have to do transition with yellow. So it's kind of like the same amount of time that you would with the other ones, going with the 3 layers, because I have to take my time with this part of the transition. And I'm only going to have to do this once. I don't have to do 3 layers again because yellow is a sealer. So it's the same thing, like if I were to take my green, just because, you know, I want to show you something, because I have to be very careful with my other color prior. If I were to do yellow, I would prefer to do the green first, making sure that I leave the space. So just pretending that this is, I have to leave the space for yellow, right? The solid part. So I'm only going to go from here to here. So because of that, if I want to go backwards, and you only do this with yellow. The rest, of course, you're doing the way that I showed you with the red and orange. But if I was going to continue this band of color, then I have to make sure that I do the green first. Now, if I'm going fast for you, that's because I'm trying to make this video not so long. So if you have to pause in between spots just to practice, go ahead and do so, and then you can play it again when you're ready, okay? But this is where I'm going to take my time and make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible. Now, as I'm doing this, I need to make sure that I go back and fix any transitions that may be off, because it's like I said, once I put the yellow, I'm not going to be able to go back with my color. It's going to seal it. Now, on purpose, if you notice, and it's kind of hard to tell, but I can kind of pinpoint right here on the orange, it's messed up just a little bit, slightly darker. I'm going to leave it like that on purpose so you can see what happens, okay? So now, after I take my time with those, I can go ahead and do my yellow solid. And I'm going to go ahead and push as hard as I can on the rest of my tone. I don't necessarily, yes, I'm still doing circular motion, but I'm not necessarily doing any transition. I'm just pushing as hard as I can to seal. And you can kind of see the difference between the green and the orange, that if you notice that the green looks like it's transitioning, the orange abruptly stops and it has a little bit of a line, plus that little tiny area that got a little bit dirty on the paper. So if you have any imperfections before you seal, you are going to see them once you place the yellow. So that is why I say just take your time with that particular part, okay? It is good enough. If yours looks like that and you're still struggling with making it perfect, there's no worries. You just do the best that you can, okay? So now at this point, of course, with the most practice that you apply to it, of course, the better it's going to be. So just practice, practice. All right, now I am going to show you a little bit for those of you guys that do have Prismacolor who want to try this. If you are working with Prismacolor, then you don't necessarily need orange, because these have so much wax, and that's why Prismacolor are more expensive than Crayola. They have so much wax that you can actually blend these as if it were paint, and you can make that color that falls in between. With Crayola, you can't do that, so that's why you have to follow the order of the color wheel, okay? From green, then you can go into blue with the same technique that I did over here. So I would transition the green into the blue, and then from the blue into the purple, and I can even start again and do the purple to the red. So on your practice, which I will explain right now, if that's going to be your design, because you have to think of a design to apply this somehow within it, you can do a color wheel, within color wheel and so forth, and that will work. Now for Prismacolors, let me just show you this so that way if you want to, maybe this will entice you to want to try to buy them. They can be expensive. A box of 24 can range anywhere from $25 to $35 at regular price, of course, because I have seen them at Walmart for about, I think, $18 I've seen them at. So you can get them a little cheaper there. You can order them online through Amazon, and you can try to find better prices. If you are going to buy from stores like Michael's, which is where you would get them more expensive, I do recommend wait till you can get a coupon for the store, so that way you can get it cheaper, okay? They do have larger packets than 24. You can get like packets of 150, which you can only imagine how much those cost, but I mean, again, it's not necessary, okay? This is just to kind of play around with. We will be doing a project with a watercolor later where you apply the color pencil on top of the watercolor, and Prismacolor will look a lot better. So that's, if you want to buy it, it's possible for you to get it, then go for it, okay? So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the yellow and I'm going to put the transition just the same way that I did. Now you do still have to do this in layer. Don't push so hard. The thing with Prismacolor is that as soon as you apply the pressure, it will seal just like it does with the color pencil. So it's better to go layer upon layer, so that way you can get as much of the color that you want in it. Because the thing with Prismacolor is that the moment you apply so much to it, you cannot apply any more. The texture of the paper, especially since this is copy paper, the texture of the paper will not allow you to do so. So just take your time. See right here, it looks a little scratchy, so I'm just going to take my time and make sure that that transition is a little bit better. I'm going to actually add a little bit more yellow, so I have that solid color of yellow. And then I'm going to start applying the pressure a little bit more, and you'll notice that it'll start to smudge together, because this is a heavy waxed material that it will blend like paint. So if I push really, really hard, because I know that's as much red as I know I want to put in there, you will get an orange in between. So that's the kind of cool thing about these colors, is that you can blend them like paint and already practice that. So, you know, if you look at this, it has the same look as this. So it's kind of like less material in a way, just because you're only using 2 rather than having to do all 3 for that same effect here. So that's just a heads up for those of you guys that didn't know what Prismacolors were, or what they are, or why they're so expensive. That's pretty much the reason, okay? So now that I kind of showed you a little bit about color blending, and I do expect for you guys to at least do this, hopefully, for the next class period, we are going to be working on a design, applying the same technique here, okay? So I am going to just quickly show you some options. Won't take me very long for that. And then you can just start applying your color tones to this. You can either choose to keep it simple, and if you just want to do something like where you get a ruler, or something that you can draw a straight edge. They don't have to necessarily be the exact same thickness either. And you just want to kind of draw your lines like this, back and forth. So I'm just gonna create some lines. Again, they don't have to be the same size. I'm using my ruler, so that's why I'm making them the same size. I'm just making them the width of the ruler. But like, if I want to be random with it, and let's say on the next line, you know what, I want to try a little bit thinner of a line. And maybe this one just a little bit thicker. And kind of like, if you were to apply all of those colors going back and forth, it'll kind of give you a look of like a sarape, almost like in Charo days. Then that's fine. You know, that's a cool design. So I'm fine with that. You want to do some little triangles in between. You can add some like little triangles on them and make it look like a little woven blanket. I had some people that, you know, we were playing with it and we were doing like a checkerboard pattern. So we just went opposite this way. You can decide to do it maybe on some of it and not all of it. So like, let's say, and I'm going to make this one a little bit thinner just to play with the design. But if I wanted to go and maybe make some imperfect lines, that's all good. So you just kind of play with yours and see what you like better. But it does not necessarily have to follow an exact. You can kind of make it look like if it were a plaid texture and so forth. So I'm just going to leave mine like that, because I kind of like that I have some long areas that I can play with. And once you do that, then you're going to be applying your practice transitions in these little spots, okay? Now, does it have to be just like this? No. If you want to do like some triangles in there, or circles, or just the more creative you are, the better. Again, I'm not going to go over it too much, just because of the fact being that I don't want to make the video too long, and we are still working on this during class. So for those of you guys that join us on the next class period, we are going to continue this. The only thing I recommend, and with mine I did it dark so you can actually see what I'm doing on camera. I do not recommend making these pencil lines as dark as I did. I would keep them as light as possible. I went over that during class. Again, I do go into more depth during class, so I do recommend joining the live classes, but I will have these here as backup for you guys. Those of you guys that are not showing up to my class, just a reminder that you do have to not only do this project to get the credit for the class and the grades, but to get attendance, you need to be doing the writing assignments that I am posting online and tagging you specifically to do, okay? So if you are getting the assignments assigned to you, please make sure you do so I can correct your absences. So After that, again, like I said, you're just going to apply these techniques over here, and you're just going to practice. This is just more for practice. We will be working on the practice again, like I said, this next class that we attend. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and start playing with watercolors. So by the next class period after the one we're going to see this coming week, the first one, then I'm planning to already get started. If you do not have your watercolors at that time, you can continue with this project if you hadn't finished, just to get the credit for being there in class. But I do expect for everyone, and because I'm going to be showing you guys some techniques, depending on what day I see you guys, because I have a couple, no, actually I only have one painting class, so I should see you guys, I see you Monday and Wednesday. So Wednesday's the day that we'll be using these, so just be ready for that, guys. And hopefully we can get everything situated so that way everybody is working with me on Wednesday. Again, if you're not, you don't have this by Wednesday, then you're working on this, but paying attention to what I'm doing so that way you can join us for the next class period, okay? So if all you have access to is to buy a cheaper brand, it's not, Prang is not necessary. So if you find, or if you find the tubed watercolors, just make sure you have some kind of palette to work with, and I will show you how to use those as well. Okay guys, so we'll see you next class period. Thank you.